What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel. Check out the content. And so, with that being said, man, I wanna speak some more about this interview that Isaiah Thomas gave to Running Back Podcast when they spoke about, you know, the players of today and this today's era being able, like, which players do he think would have been able to play in back in the 80s when he played, right? And I always said, I said in previous videos that I think that today's players, like today's players would have been able to adapt to playing in the NBA because I think people on general adapt to their environment. So anybody who could have made it to the NBA today, in my opinion, would have been able to make it back in the day. That the thing is, though, I don't know if you would have had the same impact but that's something, a whole nother conversation. But I do think that because people adapt to their environment, they, if it was a more physical game, Steph Curry would be, his game would look a little bit different. Kevin Durant game would be a little bit more different, but now today is more finesse. So that they don't have to play the way that Isaiah played and Magic played and Bird played back in the day. So, but I think that they still would have been able to play because they developed the skills necessary to make them professional basketball players, make them professional athletes, right? And so that, in my opinion, that's still the same. And so Isaiah also spoke about like if Boogie, if DeMarcus Cousins would have played back in his day, he think that Boogie would have been a dominant center, right? A dominant big man back in the day. And I watched Boogie Cousins play, and his game kind of reminds me of the guy Kevin Duckworth. Kevin Duckworth played, he had some good years when he played with the Portland Trail Blazers. I know he made at least one All-Star team, but overall, I think Kevin Duckworth was he was a manageable big man. He was like in the middle of the pack but he wasn't dominant. And I think that this is what the role of and I want, if you disagree, I want you to let me know, like, why do you think Boogie would have been more dominant back in the 80s? But I think that he basically, and not Kevin Duckworth had a really good career, with the Portland Trail Blazers. He's with the Portland Trail Blazers when they went to the championship, when they played against, the Chicago Bulls. He was a better than average, big man. And I think that Boogie would have been a better than average big man. Probably would have made some All-Star teams, but I don't know if he would have been to the level of somebody like an Hakeem Olajuwon or Dave Robinson or Patrick Ewing. I don't think he'd have been that. I think he'd have probably been more so like a Kevin Duckworth, right? So, but if you disagree, let me know in the comments and let me know why, you think that Boogie would have been more effective. I think the 80s would have, he was tailor-made for that era of basketball, definitely, because of his size and his skill set. He was definitely tailor-made for the 80s, but he wouldn't have been like dominant like like Hakeem Olajuwon or Shaq or any of those guys. So let me get into what Isaiah have to say, because I think Isaiah makes some good points. Some of what I agree with, and some, I want to give my opinion on.
Today would have been great when you played.
I think a great majority of them still would have been great. I think Durant still would have been great in our era. I think, LeBron, of course, and Steph, with his ability to shoot the basketball, his game would have been a little different, but he still would have been great because he can.
All right, let me take Durant. How would Durant game, in my opinion, be different if he had to play like in the 80s, right? With his skill set, I think that Durant probably would have played closer to the basket, more so on the wings, like either the left elbow or the right elbow. That's where probably the bulk of his shots would have came from, because if if Durant had to dribble more than 2 times to get to the basket, they would have been, because it was so physical, they would have been knocking the ball away and trying to steal it from him. So Durant probably would have been playing closer to the basket. Even Durant, he would have had to also develop like a turnaround jumper, where as though he'll post up, turn around, and just fade away, because before you can really affect him with the contact. And I think Durant would have been really, he'd have been able to succeed. And now, as far as like Steph Curry moves really well without the basketball. So I think Steph Curry would have been able to he wouldn't have shot as many threes, but he also would move better without, he'd have had success because he really moves good without the ball. And he's, so he's not a spot up shooter. He can spot up, but I think Steph would have some success too moving without the basketball, but he wouldn't shoot as many threes.
Shoot the ball from half court. I look at, again, as I referenced earlier, I think the game has been simplified, and the complexity of the game schematically has changed. Now, those players I just named, intellectually, they would have the brain power to understand the schemes that were being instituted at that time. In this era, there's only one scheme defensively. Everybody switches, and there's only one scheme offensively. Everybody plays, pick and roll. So, there's no, moving your teammates around. There's no getting people in foul trouble. There's no understanding, full court press, half court press.
Yeah, see, all that came into play back in the days, right? That was all part of the strategy. Get people in foul trouble, press, press full court press. Some people you can full court press and get away with it. Some people you can press half court press. Like as soon as they bring the ball across, then you just do a trap or something like that. Like all that strategy is like gone. They don't do that anymore. In the NBA, just it was just so much strategy, making people go to their offhand and try to score. If you right-handed, we're gonna send you left. You left-handed, we're gonna send you right. If you you got a low post game, we're gonna push you out of the, all that strategy went into it. But nowadays, none of that is taken into account. But I think it's coming back though.
That's zones, all the stuff that you had to come into the game with. You used to get a playbook about, this size. Now you don't even, they don't even practice now. So, but I do think that the really upper echelon in the league right now, they would have been able to play in our era. Now, would they have been able to be dominant in our era? No. But I look at a guy like Boogie, right? In our era, Boogie would have been a dominant player. In this era, they telling him to go out to half court and set a screen and then run back to the baseline and then come back up and set another screen and then run. It's like he's doing suicides,
All right, so Isaiah said that in the 80s, Boogie would have been a dominant player. So I got to push back on that. Even even in this era, I don't think that they use Boogie right when he was in the league. Like Isaiah said, you had him playing away from the basket. You didn't have him playing to his advantage, which was in the low post. But Boogie didn't really have any moves. Like he didn't have his signature shot, whereas though he would have been able to something that was unstoppable. He would have been, in my opinion, I said like a Kevin Duckworth, somebody who in the right system could have been effective. But Boogie never had like a move, like a go-to move, whereas though it was unstoppable. Like for instance, like a go-to move would be something like the sky hook that Kareem had, or Hakeem Olajuwon was dominant because of his footwork in the paint, right? And it was hard to stop Hakeem Olajuwon. Who else was had go-to moves? Like Shaq was so dominant because of his size. So Boogie he would not have been dominant like that, you know, and he'd have been a very good and probably would have made, like I said, made some all-star teams, but he would not have been a dominant center or a dominant low post presence. And when you're talking about going up against Shaq, you're talking about going up against Hakeem Olajuwon, Dave Robinson, you know, Patrick Ewing, all these guys, you know, I would have loved to have seen Boogie had the opportunity to play against those guys. But I just think that he'll probably been somewhere in the middle of the pack when it comes to big men. Like I said, probably like Kevin Duckworth. Now, and Kevin Duckworth made some. I know he made he made at least one NBA All-Star team, and he had some good years in Portland. He eventually wound up playing for the Washington Wizards, or was it the Bullets when he went there? But yeah, man, that golden era of basketball, though, man, was just, you know, it was, to me, it was the best. The 80s and the 90s, yeah, that was the best basketball. So, but yeah, that's my take on it. Let me know if you what you think, how you think Boogie Cousins would have made out in the 80s, you know, playing with against Robert Parrish and all those guys, man. You know, it wasn't easy. It was not easy. But with that being said, man, y'all make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment, and I'm gonna check you all out in the next video. Peace.